Andrew found a way that we'll be able to go ahead and post these from Teams onto YouTube so that folks that don't have a New Hanover County email address are able to access the videos in case they miss out on anything.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad it was able to work out. It was beyond my technical capabilities, I'll say that.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. How many folks do we have in, if you can see that right now, Rachel?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us. 9. Sorry.
9. I think we're waiting on 2 more.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get it kicked off, and if there's a couple of folks coming in a little bit later and then you want to catch up, they can go to the YouTube video and catch up with that. As we discussed last time, we're going to discuss primarily today housing and transportation, and go through the list there. I believe I sent out to most of you kind of a recap of the first meeting. Just kind of using some of the bullet points that we had discussed and that had come up on a regular basis in all of the categories that we're going to be discussing, and sent that out to you. If you didn't get it, let me know and I'll send it out. But we want to modify that a little bit. But today's focus is going to be on housing, going to be on transportation. Rachel will go ahead and kind of lead the housing discussion, and then I guess Vanessa, you've got a presentation that I would like everybody to see from WAVE, and then we'll talk about transportation a bit. On the homework assignment that we were bringing in, any services that exist that are in New Hanover County or that might be possible to exist, looking at the adequacy of those programs, the quality of those programs, the equity, and find out if there's anything that we don't have that is needed. So when we get both of the when we get housing done, we'll take a look at the homework assignment, see if anyone has anything that they want to contribute to the housing sector, and then we'll do the transportation discussion, and then we'll take a look at the homework assignments to see if anybody has anything that would apply directly to transportation. So with that, let's get it started with housing, and if you want to go ahead and take over there, Rachel.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to kind of invite you to participate with some of your homework as we talked through, if you have any suggestions. So from what we talked about last time, the goal with housing is to provide affordable, quality housing and housing communities with technology access located in areas that are easily accessible to outdoor and community spaces. So I think we recognize that it's important, both aging in place or different facilities, all the different levels. So kind of how I want to frame this, and if anyone has any other suggestions, that's fine. But we can start with thinking about how do we preserve the housing, whether that's the aging in place side of it, rehabilitation, not necessarily, because for aging in place, I think about modifying and repairing existing housing to make it safe and accessible. Then maybe rehabilitation for folks who want to live in their house, but they have deferred maintenance that maybe they can't take care of anymore, or they need that assistance. Who responsible agencies that work with that section, and then we'll talk about increasing the stock of housing, whether it's new affordable senior housing products, different levels, whether it's accessory dwelling units or the facilities, like we said, independent to assisted care, all that whole spectrum. Or ownership, maybe it's condominiums that are a little bit more accessible for seniors, not designed the same way. We know when you build the 3 stories, you're not putting the elevator in. So getting that 4th, that's a barrier. People don't always realize in New Hanover County, the height requirements. So thinking through that, again, the responsible agencies, maybe increasing opportunities, what do folks need to know to get into some of these facilities? I know with my grandmother going through trying to navigate the system, whether it's trying to figure out her veteran VA benefits from her late husband, or all of these different things. So what benefits, what opportunities do we need to help with people? And then if there's any advocacy and education. So does that sound good to everyone to kind of break it out that way?
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with preserving housing, affordable housing for seniors. Is there anything else that I missed? Like I said, with aging in place, modifying, repair existing house, for safety and accessibility. Is there anything else important for aging in place at that point? Okay. So as far as the rehabilitation,
Rachel, before we move on,
yeah.
So I think we probably talked about this too, but I think education is a big piece of that, or connection to resources. So maybe not just the modifications themselves, but maybe also, some education on, where to get resources, disability resources in particular.
And I think that's an excellent point, because I think the educational piece is going to be something that cross over or transcends housing, transportation, the technology, the whole 9 yards. So I think we're going to find that education piece as running as a common theme throughout everything that we discuss. So I'm going to make a note of that off to the side that we can discuss that as well. But that's an excellent point.
Yeah, and I think, Vanessa, as we talk through this, if there, and I'm speaking for Tom, but, if there's a session that the Senior Resource Center can put on to help folks, would be a great outcome of some of this conversation. So as far as the aging in place, what does someone need? What do family members need to know about helping their loved ones age in place? Mm-hmm. And so as far as responsible agencies for the aging in place part of it, is there anyone, think WARM, obviously they do those repairs, whether it's the wheelchair, all of the different types of things that they do. The Disability Resource Center is another one. Are there any other agencies that we're missing from that section of that aging in place?
There was a guy in town that had a business. If that's what he was doing, he'd go in and modify, but he'd also go in and change light bulbs, change furnace filters, do like maintenance. And he did that for like a year, but he just couldn't get any traction. So he closed that down. But that's something that is needed. People need not just aging in place, but the maintenance. And you had mentioned that earlier, Rachel, is maintaining. When my mom lived on her own, my brother was 5 minutes away. He'd go over and do whatever needed done. But what about somebody who doesn't have that? What do they do?
And that's a great point. And again, I'm not trying to speak for the Senior Resource Center, but if there were a list of resources of, here are contractors that specialize in some of that, modification for seniors, maybe that would be a helpful resource. And whether it sits at the Senior Resource or maybe, someone like you sits with your organization, just someone that's, not vetted all the way that we're going to do background checks at insurance, but just here people we know that specialize in that. And so,
and that's what I'm saying. I can easily add those things to Care Finders because I don't vet anybody on Care Finders. That's consumer choice.
Yeah.
Right. So they have access to the information. What they do with it is up to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Might be a good idea to incorporate those ideas, maybe have Pam come out and talk about those things at the Senior Resource Center once we're able to get open.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what you're able to do and encourage is different than what we can from the government. So that's where we need to think that through.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So as far as the rehabilitation, as we said, that's going to be minor repairs where some just deferred maintenance. Maybe it's a roof, water heater, all those kinds of things, up to a major repair, for substantial.
Hey, Rachel, I'm sorry to interrupt. I got a question. You just hit on kind of what Pam is able to educate certain areas about, but what you guys are kind of limited on, what you could do from a government perspective. What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Well, we're not going to, the county's not going to encourage certain contractors, if that, we would have to do insurance vetting and all of these things. So we can't put it out there that, here's a contract. There's so much liability that gets involved. Whereas Pam doesn't have that because it's that consumer choice, if that makes sense.
Yep. Perfect.
And I make sure that if I put people on my site when they're individuals like that, I make sure they're licensed, insurance, and if they have insurance, they're licensed and they're bonded before I'll put them on as individuals. Even like private caregivers, I have to have proof of insurance, bonding, and because that's a liability for me. If they use a private caregiver and they do something wrong, they're going to come after me, and I'm not having that happen. So yeah.
And another aspect of that is, we were talking about ongoing home maintenance and things like that. We're also looking at, we're obviously in a hurricane area, and when there's after storm cleanup, I know I used to deliver a lot of home delivered meals to folks on behalf of the county. And people were asking me all the time, is there someone that that can help me with my storm debris? I can't get out in the yard. I can't, clean this stuff up. So I don't know if that might be something that could also be included on your site.
Even prep for the storm.
That's not going to be coming in from another state and taking advantage of the elderly.
Sure. Yeah, but you even think about storm prep. If you have a senior, now they've got to get food and water and, bring everything from outside. And how are they doing that? So that's, I can add any page on that site we need to. I just need to give my developer a little bit of heads up and they can put stuff on there. So.
Rachel, there used to be a nonprofit, Susan Silver's nonprofit Aging in Place Downtown. I'm not sure if that has folded or it just transitioned.
I think it's called like Comprehensive Care of Wilmington now.
Yeah, the unique thing about that is there was significant case management prior to any type of intervention or connection with resource. And I think that's kind of maybe where I'm going with this thought of education. Education / case management, because it might not be the right idea for someone to live in their home at some point. And, to have support around that, I'm just thinking of conditions such as dementia or others where, to have someone just watching and making sure, when the time is right to, change the environment so that it continues to be safe and good support system for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of a question mark. Are there agencies that are doing that level of case management? I know that most agencies do a little bit, and I know Senior Resource Center does case management. WARM will probably do a level of assessment and case management. DSS, of course, but aside from Aging in Place Downtown, I guess, does anyone know of a similar model?
There are some geriatric care managers in town that will do that. They go into the home and do an assessment. Andrew's wife actually has a business, Assistance for Life Care Management. And there was a piece of home in Wilmington. I don't think they're functioning, but there are some programs that will go in and do that assessment to determine whether they can help this person age in place or whether it's time to cut the cord and pull them out, right? So there are some, but they're limited. And that is a need.
Yeah, it's funny about the storm. One of my mom's neighbors, when Florence happened, and this one woman had to, she evacuated and stayed with some family, and they saw her for the first time, like for a long period of time. They're like, "Ooh, you should not be living on your own anymore." Like they just didn't realize until they actually were there. And so it's funny how the storm really changes a lot of things sometimes. So.
Holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas is usually when you see a spike in people being moved to assisted living facilities, and because family sees the parents they haven't seen in a while, and they're like, "Holy cow!" Like,
yeah.
But even Rachel, you find people who see their loved ones every day, but they don't understand or they don't have the awareness, the education to go, "Wow, we maybe need to take some action here." Mm-hmm. They just assume, "Oh, they're just getting older. It's okay to forget," or "That's just normal." So there's a lot of education across, like you said, Tom, everything. And that's a huge area. People don't know how to recognize the signs, I guess, and make that move.
I think people don't want to recognize the signs as well. I mean, they think mom and dad are doing okay, and as long as they think mom and dad are doing okay, then they're doing okay. Like
and they don't have to deal with it. Yeah. They don't have to deal with it. So my own brothers who lived near my mom, we'd say, "Something's up." When we're in Houston in North Carolina, we're going, "Something's up." And they're like, "Nah, she's fine." Like, no, she's not. Right?
So there's a lot of other things that you can do besides moving them into assisted living. We don't have any of the options in Wilmington so much, and it costs a lot of planning, but I did a lot of research for this meeting, and there's some really great things because people really do want to live in their own houses, but they need support to be able to do it. And there are a bunch of them, if you want me to tell you what they are, that are in different states that we haven't done. And it really takes the community and Wilmington, the commissioners in New Hanover County and in Wilmington to realize it's a priority, because right now they don't. The best example is Project Brace, where they're giving 5% right now to workforce living, which is sort of like senior living also, which would be a super place for seniors to live downtown because there's sidewalks there. They're going to put a park there. Hopefully they're going to have a grocery store, but they're not even looking at that option. So part of it's a whole new mental change that they've got to realize this is really important, and they have to be able to want to do something. But that is a huge example where it would be terrific for, I think, senior housing or workforce housing.
And we're going to get into that in just a minute with some of the new housing. We can definitely talk about that in just a minute. I just want to finish up with the preserving. So for rehabilitation, before and after storm repairs, prep and repairs, major repairs, minor repairs, the minor repairs being some more of the deferred maintenance, the major repair being the deferred maintenance that goes on too long. Is there anything else that I'm missing for some of that? I'm sure that we're missing a lot.
What about legal issues? Is that in the scope of what we're discussing?
I think that's very important, especially when we talk about some of the repair programs, like even with the city of Wilmington, some of their programs, there's a lot of issues that folks run into with air properties. And so if they don't have the deed straight, it's very difficult to get a loan. And so even if you have the ability to get a loan for repairs, a lot of banks don't like the air property. There's just too many people on the title. And I'm sorry, air, H-E-I-R, for those, I don't mean to be confusing. So that is an issue that sometimes you need that legal help of how do you clean your title. So.
Yeah, and I think legal comes in too, real quick, Rachel, legal comes in too. If someone doesn't understand the ramifications, if they decide they're going to downsize and sell their house and they're going to start giving money away, then they, you know, now they need Medicaid. Medicaid does a 5-year look back and now they're screwed because they've given their money away. So there are some legal issues. Yeah, definitely involved.
Yeah.
Again, that's
They
back
all
to the educational
need
piece and helping people plan for that situation.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
for storms, they need to have somebody help them fill out the forms. A lot of times that's a big issue. They're not applying for the insurance because it's just too overwhelming for them
Right.
to fill out the forms.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that case management is going to cover a lot of that. We'll probably be able to tie it into a lot of the different objectives and goals. So we look at increasing the stock of housing, developing new affordable senior housing, rental options, or homeownership. You know, we don't really see a lot of condominiums being built right now. And part of the reason that they're not built at that time is there's what I've learned is that there's a lot of legal issues after the first 10 years where so a lot of folks will develop an apartment complex, and then after that liability period ends, they may convert to being condominiums for sale product. So that's why we're not really seeing a lot on the market right now in that sense. And so what other types of new housing is appropriate for seniors? Not just the assisted living, but the independent living, or maybe the type of complex where it goes from independent living all the way down. You know, is that what we think we need here?
You need
And how do we
multi-generational.
So-
I need multi-generational. We talked about that briefly before, and I just had a meeting with a friend this morning who had a neighbor who had Alzheimer's, and that's what the family did because there wasn't anything available. They bought a plot of land and had the mom and dad on one end, the other family members on the other, and so they had communal kitchen, living room stuff, but they had privacy because that's what they needed to help take care of mom, and that was their solution to the problem. But I think if we had some multi-generational housing in Wilmington, it would be huge.
So
I think
that's what ADU is. Do you know what an ADU is? It's an affordable dwelling unit
Mhm.
that you could either have attached to your house or you can build a small unit behind your house. And you could either, as an elderly person, live there and have your family live in the house, so you're all in that area, or you could live in that house and have your caregiver live back there. But they're really working on the rezoning in Wilmington to be able to make it easier to do the ADUs. And that's a huge benefit, and it's not as expensive. And you're staying in the community where you want to stay. So
It's like the granny shed and the she shed, except modified for granny.
like granny flat. It's also called granny flat, right? Yeah.
And I think something to that I do want to say about the multi-generation housing is when we have some of these new senior housing products that come on the market, they're that 55 and plus.
Mhm.
And something that we've heard, not a lot, but what I hear sometimes is that's great. But then all of a sudden, if you have a grandparent who's caring for their grandchild,
Can't live
they're
there.
not eligible to live there anymore. And that's an issue. And so how do you know, there are some other types of, you know, lower income housing that you could live in, but it's just, you lose that senior 55 plus sometimes, and that's a real struggle. So that's where that multi-generation really is important to pick up
And
So,
even for
I'm-
just its different stages of care, for those that don't have family or that don't have family in town, that can buy into something such as like a Champions and then move into, so if you can live independently, you can live independently in a quad or in a quint there, then you can move into assisted living if you need that. Someone comes in, does your housekeeping, does your laundry, you got your meals available. And then if you need skilled nursing care or you develop dementia, whatever, you have a continuum of care, which is a good thing to buy into for folks that either don't have family at all or don't have family in town.
mhm.
So that's really great, and Trinity Landing is also doing it now, but it's like $6,000 a month without extra care. So
Mhm.
that leaves a lot of people not being able to do that. There's one that I saw that's called Apartments for Life. Have you ever heard of that? And it's an innovation where they have like a cluster of houses, like
Oh, you
We lost you,
cut
Elaine.
out. And so I see that Megan Zielinski's on this call, so I want to bring her in if she has any input of supportive housing for seniors, permanent supportive housing, or any other type of needs that you think we need to address in increasing the stock for seniors.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. While I primarily work with homeless, not just specific to the aging population, but we see that we have an older homelessness population between the ages of 51 and 61, which really is probably much higher since homelessness can put a pretty big wear on, multiple facets of someone's life and situation. And a lot of our folks have, limited income, either no income or the, very minimum 783 for Social Security. So, we're always struggling and trying to find affordable units for not just, our aging population, but our entire homelessness population. And the senior housing, we don't have any control over their wait lists or anything that they do in their processes, but it's almost impossible to get anyone in there because they have such long wait lists. And so, yeah, we struggle for housing. So we really, really need affordable units, super affordable units, and hopefully we can get that.
How
Thank you.
many are there in Wilmington? How many like low-income senior housing developments are there?
I am not too sure about that since we don't just work with the housing and the senior housing. It's usually not really an option for us either, or our case managers, because of the long wait lists, and they are pretty strict when it comes to criteria, the income requirements, the credit score and criminal history. So we can't really usually get anyone into those units anyway. But I do believe that the AAA department on the COGS website has a list of housing, senior housing in the area. I can try to locate that or get that from the director and share it with, Rachel, who can share it with the group.
So what kind of options are you looking for?
I think for us, we would want to see, to increase the stock of available housing, including the rental, on all ends of this income spectrum for the folks who can afford the higher, that $6,000 a month. Maybe is there any way to get that down to a lower without compromising their services? And then, like, what we're going to talk about next is increasing opportunities. What is available to help get some of these rents lower? Like I mentioned, are there VA benefits that help go to those costs? And I'm sure Pam has a lot of suggestions. She may have recommendations for that. But how do we make up that difference?
Right, right. How do we
services.
make up the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what you have to look at too, Rachel, comes into when people are getting Medicare benefits, right?
Yeah.
And then they're getting VA benefits, and then they can only have so much money in their accounts because then they're going to lose benefits. There's a whole piece behind this, which is, we got an elder law attorney for my mom because we didn't want to make a wrong move. There's so much education that people need that they don't make mistakes on that. And going back to the housing, I've seen these communities where they do like the tiny homes,
Mhm.
for the homeless. They build a little village of tiny homes or little cottages that are affordable to give them some independence, some dignity back, give them a place to live. I don't know, land in Wilmington, I don't know if there's a whole lot, everywhere I look, they're building something on it. But I
It
think
takes less
something like,
land. It takes less land for a tiny home.
yeah, it doesn't take much, exactly. I've already told my daughter I'm building a house behind her backyard. When I get older, that's where I'm going to live, in her backyard. So I'm covered, but I'm saying something like that would be awesome, to have a community of people that are living in tiny homes and can't afford to live there.
And you know, and it goes into that multi-generation housing too, where you have the younger folks who can help take care of some of the older, and you really create that community in that sense. Everyone takes care of that neighbor helping neighbor concept. So, so for responsible agencies right now, I have City of Wilmington, just for some of their funding options, the low-income housing tax credit developers. That's where you're going to get some of those affordable senior housing products, or just general affordable housing products. The Wilmington Housing Authority, with some of their redevelopment that they're going to be doing, you know, how can they increase some of their units and get those for seniors as well. If there's anything I'm missing in this section, if not, we're going to move on to increasing opportunities. And again, that's where we're going to say, how do we get folks into some of these homes? What are some barriers that we see with housing? And I think you mentioned, I think something, this education piece that's so important is that 5-year. So what do you need to do, and when should you start planning? I know for myself, my parents, they're almost 66 and 68, and they're like, all right, we need to start getting some of these things out of our names, because if something happened to us, we need to start that time clock now, you know, and start thinking ahead. They know this because they went through it with someone. A lot of people don't know it until they're in it. So how do we do that proactive education piece on housing? So this is not something that I am obviously specialized in, so I'm asking for any suggestions here.
I think that's things that you do through the senior center. You do through, I can put videos on my website. I have resources on my website, whole articles and helpful info section. We could put educational articles and information up there. But Rachel, I've heard horror stories of people who were thinking ahead and said, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give my son and his wife the house and sell, you know, give it to them, and I'm going to live with them. And then the transaction takes place, and then the son kicks that mother out of her own home.
Oh, right? Yeah.
So and there's nothing they can do legally, because she was of sound mind, signed it over thinking her son was going to take care of her, and they booted her out and took her house. So that's why it's important that people know from the very beginning what they need to do and what they need to avoid, because it can be a disaster down the road. So that's a huge education piece. And because I'm in the industry, I happen to know the phenomenal elder law attorney in town that we used. So, but you know, I know what I was doing, but think that people don't even know where to begin or know that they need to even take that step. And it wasn't cheap. It was $11,000 for the attorney, but it was worth every penny, because it avoided disaster down the road. So
most lawyers who do elder care will give a talk anywhere because they're hoping to get clients. And I've been several places where they have given talks. And you do need to hear it, and then, you know, figure out what you need to do. But they know, like you said, you went, and it's not inexpensive. $11,000 is probably normal, unfortunately, to get everything straight.
Right.
So you mentioned about like the Medicare. I had mentioned the VA benefits. Is there anything else that we feel that really can help sort of bridge that gap of the financing that could help folks get into some of these facilities or homes? We mentioned some of the programs, whether it's with a program like WARM or the City of Wilmington, partnering with some private contractors or anything like that. Is there anything we're missing in that?
Well, people can get qualified for Medicaid. That can help them with assisted living, independent living, well, not independent, but assisted and skilled care. But those beds are so limited. So once someone becomes Medicaid eligible, which is great because it protects assets, and then they become Medicaid eligible, that can help them afford some of these things. The problem there is a lot of these facilities only have like 1 Medicaid bed or 2 Medicaid beds because they're not making a lot of money off of it. So then to get that slot in a quality facility is extremely rare.
So what you have to do is you have to, oh, can you hear me? Keep going. Okay, what you have to do is you have to go into a nursing home or assisted living as a paying person, so that when you're there paying, and they do take Medicaid patients, because some of them don't, they will
Mhm.
automatically flip you over.
Right,
So if you go in paying, you have a much easier time to get a
Right.
Medicaid bed.
right. And I know I'm a part of the New Hampshire Healthcare Marketers Group for, it's like, that provide services for seniors in the, whole county. And that'll come up sometimes. Someone will say, hey, we have a bed available for a male Medicaid. And so then the other places or home care agencies or whatever know and can refer. But that's rare that we get that announcement that there's a free Medicaid. There's a Medicaid bed available. So
So that's a great point that I want to ask. Are there good referral networks? And is there good communication of providers in the
Mhm.
area that can help? Say I were to apply, I'm not eligible here. They can help.
Right.
I think a Home for Mom. I think is that an
Place
organization?
for Mom.
Place for Mom. Yeah, they've been helping my parents with my grandmother do that. So something like that where they're referring it out, like things that exist like that.
Right. Well, there's a Place for Mom, but yeah. Anyway, there's a Place for Mom, but the healthcare network that I'm involved with, we meet monthly. And so we share that information like, hey, I've got a bed available, or hey, I'm having this situation and I have a client that needs this, whether it's a home care agency or independent living or whatever, and they refer to each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very helpful. Just a real quick Place for Mom thing. They only refer to people that pay them, just FYI. So it's not always the best place.
Right. And I found that happen. I did that with my mom, and they only referred to places that they were making money. But like if you've got a parent who's a dementia parent, there is a organization here in Wilmington who know who to talk to and can help find you a bed if you need a bed for, for Alzheimer's. So there are different organizations depending on some of the health issues of a family member that could help you find specifically for those. And of course, Alzheimer's is, the basic one where you have so much more issues getting beds.
Right, and there's assisted living locators, which is it's like a Place for Mom, but he actually takes people into facilities. His name is Mike Hartman. So he'll actually take people in. And with COVID, he couldn't do that, but he gets paid if the family decides to go with the facility, then he gets paid from the facility. Sort of like a Place for Mom, but his is more local and personal, and he goes in and kind of helps guide them on tours and the right questions to ask and the best fit for the family. And he actually has done it in places that don't pay him. He's all about the client and what's best for them. And so like Brightmoor won't pay him, but he still places people there. Davis won't pay him, but he still helps place people.
What's his name? What's his name?
Mike Hartman. It's
Mike
Assisted
what?
Living Locators of Wilmington. Mm-hmm. And he's on my website. Go to carefinders.com, look under assisted living, and you'll see Assisted Living Locators of Wilmington. All his contact information is there. But it's great because he's local and he knows all the people and he knows, what might be the best fit for a family. And it doesn't cost the family a dime.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of touched on this, but as far as advocacy and education, we've talked a lot about some of the programs, but, I know CareFinders is a great resource. Is there anything that the Senior Resource Center can be doing, whether it's website, outreach, events that we think we need to include in this section?
All of the above.
Right.
There's not enough education in this community. It has been such a huge gap, which is why I started CareFinders, because there was nothing here to help people find what they needed. And it's such a huge need. And as the population's growing and more people are coming in and more 55 and over housing's being developed, people are moving into the area that have no idea of the resources here. So that education.
Is it a resource fair? Is it a senior, that here's all of this, everything comes, on site. We have this great fair. Here are some options. We do this. And maybe you already do this. I apologize if you do, Tom. But, just like really making sure that we're leveraging that.
Yeah.
And
I'll throw out too, if you have, I think it comes down a lot of times to finances, if you have plenty of money, you can get whatever care you want, wherever you want. So it comes down to finances. And there may be something preventatively that, speaking of education, I'm thinking about financial classes or retirement, education for younger people, how to get started. If your work isn't offering you or you're not in a place maybe where you're offered retirement account through your work, how do you set up something similar for yourself? How do you start thinking ahead, thinking about your retirement? So that would be something really interesting for younger people, and probably younger than 50, but even in 50, in their 50s, 55, folks the senior center serves. I think financial literacy overall is a great need in our community. Things that aren't taught in high school, basically adulting skills that, kids graduating from high school and even college may have no idea how to set these things up for themselves so that they do have plans. They've taken
That's
care of
great.
for their retirement.
You know what, running on that, Ollie does senior classes from, I think, 55 and above. It would be great to have the senior center or some of these people do an Ollie class about how to prepare for some of these issues. That would be great.
I know some local people that do that. One's an attorney and she does a thing, and one's a financial planner, and they work together, and they did it at Brunswick Community College and at Cape Fear, and taught, especially for like women, and how to plan for the future and their finances, what they're going to need and how to make that happen. So it's very useful. Yeah. And much needs some.
The educational piece is extremely important. I think the SRC can certainly play a huge role in that. I will certainly get with our life enrichment team and speak with Andrew and the group there and see if we can do a little bit more. This last year has been very difficult with the building being closed down. And so we're looking to reopen in the not too distant future, we hope. When we do that, it'll probably be at a limited capacity. But once we're able to get some things, we're looking at some virtual programming and so forth.
Right.
Gets back into the technology divide, though, where we're able to provide certain programming that we're doing now, which is either some of it is educational. We have a little program on Thursday mornings called Coffee Talk that if you have an opportunity, you can check that out on our Facebook page. It's being run by our new virtual programmer. So we have different guests that come in and speak on a weekly basis, whether it's from somebody from the county or we've been recently having folks from the health department come in and talk about the COVID vaccines and things like that, fire safety. But it would be great to have, talking about this financial, someone that is a financial strategist or something, or even someone that a case manager that could come in and talk about some different things and about planning for getting older and those kinds of things. So I'm going to refer that to that group as well. See if we can find some folks that might be interested in coming in and talking for an hour on a Thursday morning. We're very limited right now because, again, not everybody that we serve at this current time is able to get onto Facebook. They don't have the technology. They don't have the know-how to be able to do that. Amazingly enough, we do have quite a few of our foster grandparents. They've gone through classes and they now understand how to get on. So they're doing Teams meetings and all that. So it's huge educational piece being able to make this all happen. But I think there's just some wonderful ideas as far as being able to help folks plan for their future financially and with housing. And there's just so much to consider. Laws are changing all the time. I used to be a 3-year look back when I first was dealing with my mom. Now it's a 5-year look back as far as Medicaid is concerned. And there's a lot of planning that goes and a lot of legalities that go into being able to make the right move for your elderly parents or for yourself if you don't have children that are going to be able to help you with that planning. So I think these are all great ideas. I made a lot of notes here, and I will talk to the life enrichment team about that.
Tom, do you record those Facebook coffee talks? Are they recorded and put on the senior center website?
I believe they are recorded. Okay. I'll check with Kelly to make sure, and also with Rachel and see if she is recording them. I believe they are in an archive, in the library archive. I don't know if they're accessible to anyone that can't get onto our Facebook page, but I will look at that. And if they are, I'll send that link out to you all too, so you can just kind of get an idea as to what it is that we're doing. It's the infancy stages. We've only had about 4 of them. But it was something that we're trying to do when we still don't know when the Senior Resource Center is going to be opening. So we were trying to reach out to some folks and provide some socialization and hopefully get them a little bit more acclimated with regard to the technology that's going to be required. And I think as folks like me and folks like you all on the screen get a little bit older, you're going to already have that technology piece, and it's going to be second nature. So it won't be as difficult to reach people and for them to be able to access and get the knowledge that they need to be able to plan for their futures.
So Tom, my thinking is, if you could send me those videos, I can put them on my website. So I have discussions from my deck, where I've interviewed providers and the community service providers about what they offer, sort of like an educational piece. And I think I have 16 videos up there, but I could easily add those videos up and share them on the site. And then people, that education's always there for whoever needs them.
Thank you, Pam.
And so I think as we've talked a little bit about this housing and where we didn't really talk about where it belongs. And this is where I think it really ties into Vanessa and the transportation piece, because we have maybe some land availability in different places, but where do we think that some of these new homes for seniors should be located? Goods and services, medical facilities, or are we able to provide the access to transportation? And so as we know, all of this is very interconnected. So I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa now to start talking about some of the transportation. If that's okay with everyone. If you have any thoughts, just email us as you sit through some of this housing. I took some of these notes and some of these points, and we're gonna go into a little further, as we said, kind of talk to some other providers and see if there's anything that's missing. So if something comes up later, just let us know, but I'm gonna turn this over to Vanessa now.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Again, I'm Vanessa. I'm with Wave Transit. Here in Wilmington, public transportation provider. We do fixed route service. We do ADA transportation. We have Seahawk shuttle service for the UNCW, and we have a commuter van pool service as well. And we've just completed a locally coordinated plan. This is something we're required to do every 4 years. It focuses on transportation needs for older adults and people with disabilities. As part of that planning process, we did a great deal of public outreach. And that's what I'm going to share with you today, the results from that plan, or results from the public outreach. This plan is still in draft. It has not yet been approved. It is currently in a public comment period. So if you have input on it, you're welcome to submit that at our website, wavetransit.com, or you can reach out to me directly to submit that information. So let me grab this screen. And okay, good. Everybody can see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm a visual learner, so this always helps me to have a picture of something. So again, this plan is available at wavetransit.com if you want to see it in its entirety. I'll just kind of show a snippet and be happy to answer any questions. But this is fresh information from our community. We used 4 different methods to collect information. We used a survey, we used focus groups, stakeholder interviews, and a town hall to collect this information. And so this is the combination of all of those depicted in the graph and prioritized by data collection method. So the number 1 need that we heard from community members was for pedestrian and bus stop improvements. And what we did is grouped comments. So we asked for comments, we had a survey that asked specific questions. We took all of that information and grouped it into themes. So bus stop and pedestrian improvements included things like, pull that up for you. Okay, comments around the theme of pedestrian and bus stop improvements were sidewalks at bus stops, bus stop maintenance, including landscaping, bus stop lighting, for instance. So this was all about traveling to the bus and then stepping off the bus and feeling safe. So having a well-lighted place to walk to your final destination, having a paved area without any, grass or branches or trash, etc. So safe walking path. And then also pedestrian infrastructure such as crosswalks, being able to cross the street safely to get to the final destination. Curb cuts, lots of things like that. Everything that you need to travel safely as a pedestrian from the bus stop. The second highest prioritized need was improvements in customer service. This really focused on our staff, our drivers, and a need for greater attention to training for them, specifically sensitivity training, different kinds of trainings that we will certainly move forward with. Again, this is new information. The plan will be approved in May. It will be reviewed by our board and the Wilmington Metropolitan Area Transportation Planning Organization in April, and then it will be approved hopefully by both boards in May. And then we will implement solutions and responses through programming to these needs. And one of the areas we will definitely focus very heavily on is customer service. In fact, we have begun an overhaul of our customer service program here at WAVE. It will be agency-wide. We are starting with our customer service representatives and that department. We expect that launch to occur this summer, early this summer. So that is something we are already moving forward on, but was great to, we'll be excited to resolve, hopefully, some of the issues that we've heard about. The third highest, well, actually these 1, 2, 3, 4 all scored the same. So it was a tie for second by 4 different themes. Increased marketing, and this is where comments ranged from having TV and radio ads to brochures at senior living communities, all kinds of things like that. Any way to let customers know about the programs and services that we offer and how to connect with them. So this is really what we're seeing as the education piece, that increased marketing. ADA improvements, so that's Americans with Disability Act improvements. Again, that was a range of comments, some related to service dog interactions with our staff, our drivers, making our policies more clear, for instance, what to do if you attempt to get on a vehicle and the wheelchair spots are full, for instance. What is the solution there? The solution is to have the driver radio in, and we're required by law to have another vehicle out to you in 30 minutes or less. So things like that customers told us they were confused about or needed clarification on, wanted that to be more clear. Another suggestion we received in that line of comments was to offer a free aid-assisted seat on our fixed route bus. Our fixed route bus is the bus you catch at a bus stop. We do offer a free seat for an aid on our Dial-A-Ride transportation program. That is our curb-to-curb ADA service. We already do offer it there, but the suggestion was to offer it on our fixed route bus as well. That's something we'll be talking about as an agency. And then finally, tied for second, increased service offerings. Let me just pull that up. That ran the gamut a little bit. Basically, it was just more service. So let's see, longer service hours, service to rural neighborhoods, more bus stops, serving more areas of the community. And then we had 3 that were tied for third place, different service offerings. So that was, those suggestions were things like volunteer driver services, different kinds of vehicles, a lot of creative and unique suggestions for how different service than we're currently offering, or additional service that we could offer. Then we had more frequent service. That just means instead of coming every half an hour or every hour, folks were wanting the bus or other service that we provide besides fixed route bus just to come more frequently, every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes, something like that. And then finally, more benches and shelters. So we have currently over 440 bus stops in our service area. The cost to install a bench for us, adhering to all the federal guidelines, purchasing the indestructible by hurricanes bench, doing all the site work, getting the permitting done, all of that just for a bench at a bus stop is around $8,000. And for a shelter with a roof and a light, which comes with it, it's a one piece, is around $12,000. So it's an expensive amenity, and we certainly do agree that we would love to see more, and we are working on providing more. We have 10 that are slated to be constructed in the near future. It's all grant funded funding based. So we do have 10, as I mentioned, where we have identified the funding, and we are moving forward with that. But it is a slow process, and we certainly would like it to go faster, but we understand that need for sure. So those were the top prioritized needs. We spoke with or interacted with 350 individuals to get this information. And let me stop sharing and I'll just grab a couple of more statistics for you about this effort that I think you'll find interesting. We had a fantastic rate of inclusion of the target populations. That's something I'm very pleased with this time around. As I mentioned, this is focused on older adults and people with disabilities. So that is always the goal, is to have those populations very well represented. And we did achieve that goal. So again, of the 350 individuals, 76% identified as members of the target population. So really high. And then with survey collection, the rate of inclusion was even higher at 82% of their respondents identifying as members of the target population. And that was in large part thanks to Tom and our partners at the Senior Resource Center, who got out hundreds of paper surveys to their clients. And we were able to get information and feedback from them. So that's just our most recent research around what the community needs as far as transportation. Just kind of a little bit about us and what's going on with COVID. Our ridership has declined, and we're still in a decline. We're seeing slight trend upward again, but our decline has hovered around 50% for many, many months. And that hopefully we will get back to full capacity once everyone is vaccinated and it's safe for everybody to ride again. But the need for transportation has not gone away. We know that. And we know that many of the folks who are riding now are doing so because they have no other way to get where they're going. And these are trips that they cannot afford to defer. These are the most essential trips. These are the doctor's office, grocery store trips. We know that folks are deferring trips that are less important to them, maybe more recreational. Not that that's a good thing, but that's the choice that folks are making to limit their amount of time in close quarters with other people to stay safe. So that's kind of where we are. I'm happy to take questions, or if there's Rachel, I don't know if you want me to kind of address anything else.
Vanessa, is there any possibility of you talking a little bit about the feasibility study from TransPro, or is that off the table right now?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. What in particular would you like to hear about that? The network redesign and just in general? Yeah, just a little bit of kind of a general process of what you've been going through for the last year and where we're headed, and maybe a little bit about the DART program as well. Sure thing. Well, let me jump into DART program because that's sort of related to what we've been discussing, and then I'll address network redesign. So the DART program, as I mentioned, Dial-A-Ride Transportation. You can tell how long we've had that program because it's still the dial phone, Dial-A-Ride. So we've been doing this for a while. It is a federally mandated program. Every transit agency in the entire country, if they have a fixed route, that's a bus you catch at a bus stop, they must also have what they call complementary paratransit, which we don't use those terms because they don't mean anything to, people, just regular people. They're very industry specific. But basically that means that we have to have an alternate method for folks to get where they need to go in our service area if they cannot walk to the bus stop, catch the bus at the bus stop for whatever reason. Maybe there's no pavement, there's no sidewalk, and they use a mobility device. Maybe they have medical need, all kinds of reasons why one wouldn't be able to access a fixed route. So that is curb-to-curb service. It's reservation-based. It is for people with disabilities. we receive a grant from the federal government to provide this service, highly subsidized. The customer pays $4 one way for this curve-to-curve reservation-based service. The true cost of that service hovers around $30. So we are able to use those grants to keep the cost very low and provide this service for our community. If you wanted to apply for it, we have the application on our website. You can also pick up a paper copy at our transfer stations, or we can mail a copy to anybody who's interested. Just give us a call and we'll mail one out to you. It does have to be signed by a medical professional, and that professional needs to indicate, why this service is needed. This could also be for short-term disability. If you're having surgery or there's an injury, that is also eligible under this program. So once the application is submitted, our policy is a 21-day turnaround. We may turn it around quicker than that, but at most we will take 21 days to get that processed and get you a letter stating, determining your eligibility status. And then you're ready to ride. And we just require that you give us a call 24 hours prior to when you'd like to travel and make that reservation. Anything else, Tom, that I left out, or something else you wanted me to talk about regarding DART?
The only other thing, and one of the things that I wrote down on for my little homework assignment here was with regard to the geographical location that parts of the county that unfortunately are not able to be covered by DART because folks live in areas that are not within the 3/4 mile corridor of that fixed route bus. So there is a stipulation there, and that is a need that I listed that we do need to work at trying to find a solution to for folks that live out in Castlehane or live up in Porter's Neck beyond Ogden, basically. And then with the, I don't know if you're going to speak to this much with regard to the feasibility study, but with the network design that is going to limit that space slightly more. And I don't know if it's going to be affecting, apparently our conversation, it's not going to be affecting a lot of people, but potential folks that would have had the opportunity to utilize that service are not going to be able to have that opportunity. And they're going to be looking for other means of transportation. The Senior Resource Center maybe looking at some non-traditional opportunities, some semi-private transportation like Uber and Lyft, things like that. But that's the, DART is a great service. We refer a lot of people to DART. Based on the limited funding that we have, and I'll talk a little bit about that after you talk about your feasibility, just to kind of educate everybody with regard to the transportation piece that we provide. So if you tell us a little bit about that study and that network redesign.
Absolutely, and I just want to say too, I shared that result from our locally coordinated planning effort, which spoke to the second highest need being improved customer service. That was system-wide. When we have surveyed just our DART customers, they have a 94% satisfaction rate with that service. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there that that DART is a little bit of a different animal than our fixed route service. It's much more specialized, and we did lump things together, but I would suspect, knowing the other survey results for DART, that this need we discovered was for fixed route. Okay, so let me share with you the map of the new service design. So first of all, let me back up and give you a little history. So this is a process that began in 2020 with a consultant brought in and with a new board brought in to redesign and re-envision Wave Transit and make changes to service, but also operationally as well, and in its governance as well. So this plan, this map that you see in front of you, this surface area, is a culmination of about a year's work to determine next steps. This is located on our website, wavetransit.com. We have a full page of lots and lots of information. Each of these colored lines represents a fixed route. Each of those routes is broken down on the web page with more information. As Tom mentioned, our DART service is available within 3/4 of a mile from fixed routes. So this gives you a visual. If you think about 3/4 of a mile maybe is here near the fixed route. So this is where DART service would be available starting August 15th. That is the date that we will implement this. Let me back up. This is the proposed design. We are currently taking public comment. Again, you can submit those comments online at wavetransit.com or in person at Paget or Fordham Station if you do have comments about this design or a route in particular. So there may be changes to this, but we expect it to look this way. Once that public comment period closes on June 6th, we will have a final design to share with the public. So the biggest changes to the service area are the discontinuation of 2 fixed routes. One route used to come to the north, Route 207, so that route will be discontinued. And the route that used to go to Carolina Beach, 301, will currently goes to Carolina Beach, will be discontinued. However, there will still be service available in both of those areas. We are transitioning those areas to a service called microtransit. It is a new transit technology. It is based on your location, kind of like Uber, and it is more responsive. It's on demand, similar to Uber. So you would call or use a smartphone to make a reservation for that service. So service will not go away. It will just change. The format will change. Microtransit is really interesting. Again, it's new. Some places have had fantastic experiences. Thinking of Wilson, North Carolina, they have recently transitioned their entire system to microtransit, and their customers really love it. They love it because it's more convenient, it's faster, and they can call it whenever they need it, rather than just waiting at a bus stop or figuring out a timetable. It's a little bit more customer focused, similar to an Uber model. So as I mentioned, legally, if you have a fixed route, you have to have ADA complimentary service, which is our DART service. The microtransit is not a fixed route. It is on demand. So we will not be providing DART service in this microtransit zone, is what they're called. There will no longer be DART service to the northern part of the county or to the southern part of the county south of Monkey Junction. However, there will be this microtransit service. Now, microtransit is not curb to curb like DART, and it uses virtual bus stops. We do not know the location of those bus stops currently. We are still working to engage a vendor for microtransit. We are also in the process of purchasing transit planning software, which will help us identify those bus stop areas, virtual bus stop areas. So in June, again, we will have more information, more details about where exactly the zone will begin and end, where the virtual bus stops will be, and more about how to use this microtransit service, what it will really look like. And so for customers who are currently using DART in those areas, we'll have more information in June regarding if they can continue to just switch, if they can just switch over to on demand, or how they will be impacted. So that is the plan. The other big changes for the system, the fixed route system, we're actually consolidating several routes. And we are increasing frequency on several routes. So the 108 will go to a half-hour frequency, and the 201 will also go to a half-hour frequency. So then we will.
Vanessa,
Sure thing.
Quick question.
Mhm.
Is the microtransit available to individuals that are living within the fixed route border?
Okay, great question. Okay, so microtransit, and again, we don't have all the details, but the way that it works, you establish a geographic zone. So you establish the borders of the microtransit. It's open to the general public. Unlike DART, it will be open to general public. And you only use microtransit within that zone. So if you wanted to go from A to B within the zone, you could do that with microtransit. Or you could take microtransit to a transit station, and from there you would travel by fixed route wherever you wanted to go in the rest of the service area.
And how do the beneficiaries pay for the transportation with microtransit?
Great question. I'm hoping, well, again, we haven't worked out all the details. Each vendor does it a little bit differently. There will be a mobile pay option for microtransit because you're booking on a smartphone, so we'll have an app with a mobile pay option. But I believe we may also have cash. We haven't finalized that, but we do have cash payment for the rest of our system, so it makes it, I expect that we will also have a cash option.
And another question, kind of lead off that, sorry.
Yeah.
For a Medicaid beneficiary to go to an approved Medicaid appointment or transportation appointment, such as a regular scheduled physician's office visit, would they be able to use their Medicaid benefits in order to pay for the transportation services?
Yes, and with Medicaid transformation happening in our state now, there are a lot of questions like that. The short answer is yes. Again, I don't think we have all the details with what that's really going to look like, boots on the ground with that Medicaid transformation. But Medicaid, the way that works with scheduling rides is that a customer would schedule the ride through DSS. DSS is contracting with us to provide the ride. So that piece won't change. I think with the Medicaid transformation, the change for a customer as far as transportation goes, they may have more options for transportation providers is what I understand. But we will continue to provide Medicaid trips through DSS.
And that's part of the educational piece too, because as I understand it, those contracted rides for Medicaid that are being provided are provided anywhere within the bounds of New Hanover County. Isn't that correct? Whether or not they fall within the 3/4 mile corridor.
That is correct. The Medicaid trips are different. They are different than, they're not our DART program, right? So they're not subsidized by a federal grant. We're paid through Medicaid. So yes, so we're able to take folks further outside that service area.
Right, and that when I say the educational piece, folks will contact us sometimes, and I'll talk a little bit about our programs. But folks will contact us and want to know why they saw a vehicle, a DART vehicle that arrived at their next door neighbor's house, and they live in Castle Hayne, and they want to know how they can apply for DART services. And sometimes the folks that actually use that Medicaid transportation are confused, and they know it by a DART service. So there's a lot of acronyms that are out there that are very confusing to a lot of people. And trying to explain that to someone, how that money is coming from a different pot and how they are able to reach out into other portions of the county that DART doesn't cover is a little bit difficult to sometimes explain. We at the Senior Resource Center do offer transportation to clients that are 60 years of age and older. We operate on a number of grants, one of which is the Home Community Care Block Grant. That's for folks that are 60 and over. We do, and that provides for both medical transportation, non-emergency medical transportation within New Hanover County. There are no guidelines other than the county lines as far as where pickup or drop off can be. We'll take some folks sometimes from Castle Hayne, take them down to Carolina Beach if that's where their folks are. That does cost us quite a bit of money to be able to do that trip. And therefore, we limit our clients that are on our active program to 2 visits per month. We were shorted. We normally get a grant called the ROPE grant, the Rural Operating Assistance Program. That's divided up into our EDTAP, which is, I told you there's a lot of acronyms, EDTAP, the Elderly Disabled Transportation Assistance Program, and then also into employment. When that grant enabled us to be able to help folks that were not seniors who were disabled and take them to employment and or take them to non-emergency medical transportation. With the CARES money that we received federally, both for general transportation and for non-emergency medical transportation, the North Carolina legislature did deny us the $200,000 that we would normally receive on an annual basis or thereabouts. It's actually a little more than that, to provide services to these folks. And we were not able to, therefore, provide the same services that we could provide before. So there are some folks to this point, we've not had to affect anyone. It's not affected anyone that we've provided services to, but I see it coming within the next couple of months unless we get our EdTap renewed. We also get a grant through WAVE, where it's a 5310 grant, where we are able to utilize their services, again, the paratransit equipped vehicles, to bring folks to and from the Senior Resource Center. There's a 20% county match that goes into that amount of money and into the pot to help reduce the cost and provide some additional trips. We were not able to take advantage of a lot of that because the Senior Resource Center has been closed, but we're looking forward to, when we get open, putting a lot of folks on those DART vehicles, if you will, on the paratransit vehicles, and bringing them to and from the Senior Resource Center. We also buy bus passes through Wave Transit that are part of the Get to Work program that is run through DHS. We will buy a number of those, and that's again through our ROPE funds. So we'll buy some bus passes that are 30 days, and DHS, when they have folks that are getting back into the workforce, what have you, that are looking and needing transportation, will provide 30 days of transportation, and that's not age dependent. So it could be a young person that is in that program, but that's part of how we utilize those funds. We also have a van here at the Senior Resource Center. It's 12 passenger van, plus it'll handle 2 additional wheelchairs with the driver, 15 people. Primarily, we use that vehicle to provide nutritional and shopping experiences for clients that come to and from the Senior Resource Center. So we do fixed routes that we have established within the Senior Resource Center to bring folks to and from the center, as well as provide shopping trips to and from Walmart on certain days. We've also reached out to certain housing groups such as HEPA, and we'll go out there and bring those folks in once a month, take them on a shopping trip as well. But our funding has been so limited. We're very thankful with the CARES funding. Without it, we would not be able to continue operation of a lot of the programs that we're being able to provide at this time. But it is very confusing, as I said, and there's an educational piece in there. When we've been able to be open, Vanessa's been kind enough to come down and do an educational piece on the DART program and on fixed route buses. I actually took the class with her and rode on the fixed route buses, and it can be, for someone that hasn't ridden a bus, I hadn't ridden a bus since I was a kid. And if I wouldn't have had Vanessa there, I would have been very scared. So I've been afraid I've gotten left in somewhere where I didn't want to be. So knowing how to connect with all those, and I know Vanessa's a great resource with being able to, she's assisted some of our clients in being able to make those connections that they need to make, what routes they need to run to be able to get to where they need to be in the most expeditious amount of time. But I think some of the things we need to consider beyond, I want to let you know also, we serve about 350 people that we have as active clients, and we have a waiting list right now, about 8 people coming for nutrition. Obviously, that's due to the fact that we're not available to be open right now to bring folks in here. And then we also have a waiting list of about 6 people that are on non-emergency medical transportation. We take folks to dialysis. Those folks go 3 days a week. Depending on where they live, it could cost us as much as $75 round trip to take them one time to and from. If they're non-ambulatory and they live down at Carolina Beach, and we're bringing them to a dialysis center at Yopon and then bringing them back home, that it's a lot more costly than it is if somebody lives within the city limits and they're ambulatory and we can utilize a taxi service. So it's a little bit difficult to juggle the money and the grants and trying to make sure that they go for a full year and be able to provide the service to as many people as possible. So thus we've cut our services back to twice a month, except for those that are on dialysis. They would receive 3 days a week and then 2 times a month for any additional non-emergency transportation that they might need. One of the things that I've been thinking about since I started in this position, which was about 2 years ago, is looking into getting a volunteer program established. I was hoping to do it through the Senior Resource Center. I know that there are several states that have programs that are working quite well, but it's something I think that we are eventually going to need with our aging population and the limited amount of funding that we have to be able to provide folks. We get calls every day to put folks either on a waiting list, or they don't understand why they can't call us and get same-day service. So there's some limitations that we have to work with, and we try to provide the service to as many as we can. But the hardest part of my job is telling somebody that I can't provide them with the service that they desperately need on short-term, short notice. Like I said, the waiting list has gone back to November right now. But I anticipate that in June we'll be, or excuse me, in July, when our new fiscal year hits, we get that EdTap money back, then we should be able to get down to a zero waiting list and get everybody the service that they need. With some of the, of course, there's Uber and Lyft, and then we have taxi services. Our services that we provide for non-emergency medical transportation, and some of our, as I told you about the 5310, some of the transportation that comes to the Senior Resource Center is done through 5 subcontractors that we have a contract with. They're on a 5-year contract, 1-year renewables every year, and those folks are vetted. We audit them every year to make sure that they're in compliance with our contract, to make sure that they're providing safe transportation to our seniors that require this type of transportation. Occasionally we have some issues. When we do, we deal with them very quickly and very directly with our subcontractors. And we have certain folks that we will not allow to provide transportation to our seniors, because it is a very it's a group that is vulnerable, and it's a group that we want to make sure that they feel totally safe. We've never had a problem with Wave. Those folks, treat our folks very well, and they keep their vehicles clean, and so there's not been any issues there. We were looking at maybe partnering with some faith groups, some churches, perhaps using some of their vehicles that are not doing anything 6 days a week. So there are some opportunities there, I think, that we can look into. One of the concerns I have, John, if you're still on here, with regard to veterans, transportation for veterans, if you could speak to that a little bit. I'm only aware of out-of-town transportation to Fayetteville that's provided. I get calls from vets every now and again that are looking for transportation within New Hanover County, and I would like to be able to know how I might be able to direct them. Are you on the call?
Yeah. Yes, I'm still here.
All right, thank you.
As of right now, Disabled American Veterans, DAV, was the only veteran organization providing transportation, and they have an all-volunteer driver force, and when COVID hit, they shut down. Unfortunately, they haven't reopened yet, but prior to them shutting down, they only provided services, like you said, to the out-of-town VA medical facilities, Fayetteville, and they also would go to Durham, to the larger facilities. They didn't provide services locally to our healthcare center here in Wilmington. I spoke to the transportation coordinator over there, and he wasn't quite sure if all his volunteers were going to return to enable them to restart that service. So that's basically where they sit right now as far as veteran transportation. There is none. As a matter of fact, that program it's hard to explain how it's funded, but basically it's a private public partnership between the Veteran Affairs and DAV, and they have some type partnership where the maintenance on the vans and money and so forth is transferred. So it's going to be a matter of seeing if they have enough volunteers, and if VA will continue funding or help fund those vans for the veterans. As far as local transportation, I guess it hasn't been well, I didn't ask him that question. He said they've never really done it locally. In most communities, they are closer to, those van services are closer to the major medical center. So it's not an issue for locally for most communities. But for us being down here away from the 2 major medical centers of Fayetteville and Durham, they figured those veterans that wanted to go to those locations, that would be the prime use of that type of transportation for them.
I know we do transport a number of veterans to the VA over on Gardner Road, utilizing our subcontractors. And one of their big concerns is being able to go out of town. And we have the same situation. I know you talked about the volunteers not maybe returning. Got the same situation with the Road to Recovery. American Cancer Society has volunteers that provide free transportation utilizing their own vehicles that takes folks to and from their appointments at Zimmer Center and maybe even out of town. I don't know that for sure, but there's an 800 number to call that they will assist folks that can't get to and from their appointments or don't have the ability to be able to drive to and from their appointments. They try and set that up for them. And it's been a very successful program, but with COVID coming around, it has really put a dent into their program as well. Matter of fact, they were similar to what the veterans are doing, is not transporting right now. So hopefully they'll be able to get back to some sort of skeleton scale, I guess, skeleton group to be able to get folks to and from. But that is a program that's been very successful. As far as going out of town, that's another source of need, I guess, for many of our seniors that have appointments that are at the Triangle or at in Durham, Chapel Hill, that aren't veterans that are in need of that transportation service. And Vanessa, short of Greyhound, I'm not sure how else they would get there other than paying directly to a taxi company or whatever. And that fee is roughly, depending on where you're living, $250.
So yes, Greyhound is available out of Fordham Station. So that means that you can get on any bus at any bus stop and get to Fordham Station and catch a Greyhound. We have 4 Greyhounds a day, going to Raleigh, Myrtle Beach, other places. We also have Amtrak available through Greyhound. It is a throughway bus for ticketed Amtrak passengers that takes you to Wilson, North Carolina, where you then catch the train to New York, DC. But yes, as far as medical trips out of county, unless you're, I think you spoke of the DAV, member of a specific group, we do, WAVE does Medicaid trips or out of county, some, but there aren't many that I know of.
And I will speak to one other thing, and this is just my personal observation, is with the growing number of seniors needing transportation, even just on a local basis, we're starting to hit, I feel, a saturation standpoint where some of the contractors that we're utilizing, because most of the ones that we use also provide services for Health and Human Services for Medicaid transportation, they're maxed out some days, and they have folks out of town. They have drivers that are off. They have full schedules, and the ability for us to be able to get a reliable company. We lost Taxi USA that was here for quite a while. That was about 30 vehicles that they had that they were providing service both to DHS as well as the Senior Resource Center. They left in August a year ago, and that put that additional strain of the clients that we had riding with that particular company onto the groups that we are currently using right now. So, and I don't see a whole lot of new companies that are out there that are bidding on contracts, both either for the Senior Resource Center or for DHS. So it's a tough place to work in the transportation business. No pun intended. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of educational pieces in there that need to be explained to people that they just don't understand because of the pot of money that it's coming from, or because of the location that they're at, or the service that their neighbor might be receiving. They don't understand why there's a waiting list, why that we aren't taking care of our elderly population because we don't have any money. Why did the legislature not give us that money? So there's a lot of unanswered questions that I don't have answers to some of those questions. So I try to explain it as best I possibly can. We try to serve as many as we can, but there is a need for some additional transportation options here in New Hanover County, I think. Anyone have any comments on or questions on transportation? What about on housing? Did we cover everybody's homework assignment on bringing ideas to the table that we might not already have? Is there anyone that has any comments on housing?
Hey, Tom, this is Evan. Yes, I wrote down a little note here during the housing conversation. I didn't hear a specific firm being brought up. It's 101 Mobility. It's a firm here in town that installs ramps, chair lifts, going up the stairs and things like that. I'll get in touch with Pam and make sure she's aware of, because I've looked at her brochure and I don't know if it's on there, but I'll get in touch with Pam, make sure it's on that brochure.
Okay, and they do that for housing, not just, I thought that was primarily vehicles that they converted.
Yeah, so check out their site, 101 Mobility is the name of the firm. I'm trying to pull up their site right now, but they have pictures of, you know, the chairs that kind of go up the stairs, and exterior ramps and things like that. And I think that might be a fallacy, Tom, is that most people assume it's transportation, right? But I think it's
Not that educational piece again, right?
You're exactly right, and I think that's a common recurring theme throughout this whole conversation, is that this educational piece is huge, as it relates to every area of focus. So yeah, the educational piece is huge.
Does anyone else have any comments on or questions or concerns on either housing or on transportation before we wrap it up?
I do want to say one more thing, Ms. Rachel. When we talked about transportation, we talked a little bit about the hurricane preparedness with housing, but we didn't talk about with transportation. So I don't know if we need to include something with that as well.
Wave Transit is very helpful during pre-hurricane. There are also some of our providers that we have used that continue to run. Port City Taxi continues to run during hurricanes to assist. We do have a list of people that are actually on our special needs
task force.
Yeah, they're on our special needs registry, and we contact them in advance. We do a call down to find out if they are in. Those are generally people that are either living on their own or have special needs or requirements that they need assistance from the county. The Senior Resource Center has been tasked with keeping that group of people. They don't have to be members of the Senior Resource Center or come to the Senior Resource Center. They just have to be a New Hanover County resident. And if they're on oxygen, if they and have a power outage and aren't able to use that, if they don't have transportation, if the house that they're staying in is vulnerable and they need to go to a shelter, these people are all called down when we know of a pending disaster, such as a hurricane or an emergency. Hopefully you don't use that word disaster with a hurricane, but anywhere in Wilmington again. But we do call those folks down, and we do try to provide whatever they might need. And then we have the IC3 group over at the government center and at the hospital, whereby we will contact those individuals and make the arrangements that they need to get them where they need to be and solve their issue if at all possible. And this covers everything. It's a very extensive application. It covers medications, covers their geographical area, covers transportation, covers family members, emergency contacts, pets. There's just a number of it's very thorough. And we just want to make sure that the most vulnerable among us has an opportunity to be able to survive a pending disaster. So thank you for bringing that up. But yes, the folks that we utilize for our transportation services, Wave and the other four contractors do assist us during that time of need for sure. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, thank you all for your input and for your time. Appreciate all of you. Next visit will be April the 1st. We'll go back to Thursdays and we'll do our 2 to 3:30 time slot. What I'd like to do is try to identify any barriers and I'll send out a little recap, I guess, of our conversation here. Rachel, if you could shoot to me a little bit about what you have on housing, the notes that you took, I took some as well. I'll compile them here. I'll also convert this over to a YouTube video if anyone wants to go back and rewatch this, especially those of you that are not with New Hanover County and don't have that email address, so that you'd be able to take a look at that, and also for the folks that left early. So we'll spend the first part of next meeting talking about the barriers and facilitators to success for transportation as well as for housing. Excuse me, and we'll try to get that as nailed down as we can, and then we'll take maybe the first 20-30 minutes to talk about that, and then we'll dig deep into looking at our technology aspect and the outdoor spaces piece of our group, and we'll spend the majority of the time talking on that. Any questions, concerns, comments? Anybody want to testify or confess? All right. Very
Thank
good. Well,
you
thank you all very, very much. And I'll look forward to seeing you all in about a week.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
you.
you. Bye.
Cool.
Bye.